Hi, this is Ike from IkesOutdoors.com, and you'll see behind me there's a tree stand in this big oak tree right here. Today we're going to talk about why I picked this tree stand location, and we're going to show you some of the reasons, some of the lay of the land here, and show you why I picked this stand. Now I'm choosing this stand because it was a very hard stand to pick, and there wasn't very many good locations here, but I was able to make a good choice by looking at the way the land laid, by looking at some of the trails and some of the terrain features here, and I was able to make 3 shots from this stand this year. I harvested 2 of those deer, and the third one I just plain missed. So one of those deer was about 130 class Missouri whitetail. So what we got here is just a big old oak tree, and it's surrounded by briars down here on the bottom. So I'm going to show you the lay of the land. I'm going to show you some of the terrain here. Just going to kind of pan around, and we're going to talk about why I chose this tree stand. Now, all I'm trying to do here is give a little bit of advice. I'm not trying to tell you this is how you need to set your tree stand up, because my situation is going to be different than what your situation is. The situation in this spot, your situation is different than the situation down at that end of the field. So there's a lot of variables to take into factor. I'm just going to show you kind of why I chose this stand, and hopefully you can, next time you're trying to hang a tree stand, you can take that into account and you can apply it to your situation. Here's the tree we've got the stand in. And you can see it's surrounded by briars and just small saplings and things like that. Now we've got a little tree line right here, and it's not even a tree line, it's just another set of briars and things like that. And you'll see off in the distance there's a tree line. Oh, it's about 250 to 300 yards away from us. And there's very few trees spread out across the top of this green field, or what was once a green field. And we've got the briars continue on. Now what you'll see here is there's a break in the briars right there, and I put that there with a brush hog. I just ran a brush hog through there a couple times and tried to thin it out pretty good. And you'll see that continues on and completely envelops this field on both sides. Now you'll also see there's a ground blind down at the other end of the field, and I'll tell you why I put that ground blind there. It never actually it got hunted out of very rarely, but I used it to my advantage. We've got a fence line here, and behind that fence line is a bedding area. All the deer were coming out of this bedding area. So when I started hunting this land this year, I knew the deer were coming out of this bedding area behind me right here. I knew that's where they were staying, and they were coming out this way. But there's no trees up here. There were these big oak trees that they were hitting, and they were really hitting these trees quite a bit. But how do you choose which tree to put your stand in when there's really no trails coming to it, or there's really nothing to indicate that they're going to be hitting that tree? So what I did was I looked at the terrain, and I put out basically a decoy to try to push them to this end of the field. So what I did is I came in here earlier this year, and the cutout we showed in the thicket, I cut that out right there, and it's about 40 yards, 50 yards from my stand. So I cut that out to give the deer a nice, easy place to travel through there. And I also cut one out directly behind my stand. And now I chose this tree, and I chose the position of that cutout simply because of this fence line. This fence line is really, really thick, and there's hardly anywhere that they can cross except for right here. I don't know if you can see the trail there or not, but there's actually a trail, and I found some hair on that fence line where the deer were actually coming through. It opens up just a little bit right there, and the deer are coming through right there. So that made this a pretty obvious choice of where to put my stand. Now what I ran into was I've got another area down at the other end of this field that's even better, a better crossing, but there's no trees down there to put a stand. So what I did was I came in here, and it was about 2 weeks after season start, and I put up that ground blind that you could see. Now I didn't put that ground blind up to hunt out of it, because I don't like putting up a ground blind during season, because I think deer will come out and I think they'll be alarmed by its presence. So I put that ground blind up specifically for that reason. And I got some pictures. I put my trail camera out, and I got some pictures of some does that came out, and I put the trail camera up on the trail leading to it, and you can see they came out and they're looking directly at the ground blind. So what that ground blind did was it put something there that alerted them, but it didn't put something there that would scare them away. So it wasn't something that was going to make them completely stop visiting this field, but what it did was it pushed them to this end of the field. Now after a couple months, in late December, they started getting used to it, and they started using that end of the field. But for the first 2 months, they were constantly hitting this into the field. So I got all these oaks up here, I got all this grass up here, and with a little bit of work, just the terrain, they're coming out here to hit this grass, and they're coming out here to hit these oaks, especially when this oaks fell. So with a little bit of work and by reading the terrain, I was able to put my tree stand up. And I tell you what, this was a very productive tree stand this year. I got 3 shots out of it, but I saw deer almost every time I came out of it. So my advice when it comes to that is to hang in your tree stand. If you're not in an area where there's just a beat down trail, is to look at the terrain, see how the land lays, see where the deer are crossing, and think to yourself, why would a deer be coming through here? What would make a deer come through here? And if there's no reason, put your tree stand somewhere else. Now, if their deer are coming close by but you can't hang a stand there, you can use some decoys like I did this ground blind, and you might be able to push them to yourself. Now, that doesn't work all the time. This year it worked out pretty good for me. Another thing to keep in mind is deer are lazy. Deer are just like us. If I got the choice between walking through those briars and walking through that path, I'm going to walk through that path. So these 2 cutovers here that I put in work to my advantage to bring the deer down to this end of the field. So I got the fence crossing there. I've got all the oaks that were up here dropping. I got a food source. I've got 2 real easy travel routes that the deer were using, and I've got something on that end of the field to push them this way. Now, if you don't want to put up a ground blind or something like that, you know, maybe hang a shirt up there or something like that. Something that's not going to spook the deer, but something that will make them kind of wary of that end of the field, and you can use that to your advantage. So I hope this helps, and if you got any questions or if there's anything else I can answer, please feel free to ask. Be sure to visit our website, ikesoutdoors.com. Be sure to visit our sign up for our newsletter. In that newsletter, we give a lot more tips and tricks, and I talk about what's going on with the website, as well as do a little bit more in depth on product reviews. So be sure to sign up for that, and that's ikesoutdoors.com. Thank you.
I like good times, good wine, good smoke, and a 5-piece bed. And I can't help it, it's just the way